Okay.
Get my video set back up because for some reason that's gonna. Well,
Okay, it started and it's saying it's waiting for you.
yeah, no, it disappears. Tell me the passcode again and I'll try it again.
Sure. Let me pause it. This is Dr. Lisa Dunne. Thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me today, Ginger.
And for putting up with all of the technical difficulties.
That's okay. That's okay.
Coached me through them. You were so awesome. So do you want to tell the world how I know you?
Wow. I'm trying to think how we actually first met. It's been a few years.
I feel like it was at
right.
Yeah, it was in San Diego, right?
And I think my first the first conversation with you was you were doing some stand-up. No, were you?
You always call it that, but I don't think it was meant to be. It was just a speech, but maybe it turned out to be funny. So maybe I can.
It was really funny. No, I think, were you writing a song?
I probably was.
You were probably writing a song off the cuff from the stage.
Yes, I remember.
So
because you know I'm all about debate and speeches. I remember now. I was totally spoofing on that song that was popular.
That was it. That's hysterical.
That's a favorite. I try to do that every year at camp. Make a song to go with like something famous, but you know, change their words.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Do I have your bio? Was I going to tell everybody who you are? Because I know you have amazing things.
I think you were, but say whatever you want.
Okay, well, I know I saved it to my phone.
You can just make some
people are going to be like, hey, that's not the background that all the other interviews are on. But the problem is my drywall is being finished. So you guys will get to see the drywall live on Friday, but not right now. So let me see here. I have a whole bunch of bios on here. I know Dr. Lisa is the president of Chula Vista Christian University and founder. She's an author of how many books? 3?
5.
5 books.
Yeah.
I've got 2 of them in my personal library. Tell us more about what you do, since I don't have the bio in front of me. I'm sorry about that.
About what I do, what I did. What do you want to know, Ginger?
Sure. Tell me a little bit about what makes you so awesome. I know you just won the Marketplace Award, Pathfinders Award.
That's right.
For Marketplace Entrepreneurs. You're a mover and a shaker.
For sure. And so are you, right back at you.
Well, I'm running right behind you.
20 years in higher education and kind of getting us to the point of, in terms of your introduction of being president, just saw so much incredible brokenness in the field of education and really wanted to be what we call an industry disruptor. And that is somebody who looks at your industry, your career field and says, not on my watch. You know, we're taking this back. We're going to do something positive, pro-social, proactive about this. And that's really where I got to at the end of that career in education, realized something has to be done and I'm going to do something about it myself. So here we are.
Love it. And are all of your books about education, or are they on different topics?
Oh, no. Yeah, different topics. The first book I wrote was, I was just coming out of Regent University, phenomenal school environment.
Yeah, that is.
And had just opened my eyes to the realm of media and how much of an influence it had on our identity, from songs to shows to just even back then, it was kind of there was debate whether the virtual company or things we hear on the radio or things we then kind of the launch of the internet, things that we hear, whether those are really influencing our behavior. Of course, we know today that's significant in terms of our impact on behavior, belief, our mindset. But that was my first book, just writing out everything that I learned in my first master's degree there to really start to impact culture. And so it's funny to see now that come back around because 10, 12, 15 years later, whatever, that power of media is just exponential today. So we just see that just the crazy influence. Actually, I have a radio show here on Saturdays, which, Cape Praise
That's
Radio.
right. I was going to talk about that
Right.
too.
Yeah. And so on there, we've been talking about the kind of some of the tips and tools from that first book, which is The Science of Social Influence. And then I love the field of
That is so
studying,
interesting.
studying human development and how we relate in terms of our biosocial impact, our relational impact, how that fosters either greater health or greater dysfunction, depending on kind of the words that we're bringing to the table, the mindset we're bringing to the table. So we've got some works on that, and then a lot of social change stuff. I really like to inspire other people to be industry disruptors too, really get
You
them
do.
out there,
You do
shake them out of
actually.
their status quo. So
You did
just a
that
few
with me
things like that.
too.
What's that?
Honestly, you have made that effect on me as well.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What did you get your PhD in?
So my PhD, I did a master's degree in Regent University Communication. Then I did a master's in org systems, which is like org leadership. And then human development was my PhD, which was just this incredible. First of all, the experience was incredible because our professors were all over the world. They were out of the box thinkers. They were mentors. And it really did facilitate kind of what I've built in the university, which we'll talk about later on. But that field opens your eyes to sociology, neuroscience, all the different ways, again, that we're influenced and what we can do to become the best version of ourselves. So it's really a coaching modality in that regard too, which is so perfect for working with
Yes,
Gen Zs, just working
it
with
is.
the next
It's so
generation.
perfect. I
Yeah.
myself love psychoneuroimmunology. I don't
I
know if you know that
love
about me,
it.
but I attended this really cool program in Alaska called Wellspring, all about that and how your psychology, your thoughts, and your emotions affect your actual immune system and all
Yes.
the various diseases that are linked to it. So fascinating to me.
And how much is that impacting us right now
Absolutely.
across our country? I mean, that is just an unbelievably timely degree, that field. That's really fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm hoping that I get to share some of that
Oh,
with
yeah.
people on this summit or maybe afterwards. I'm trying to make my mark on the world. Do you want to tell us about your journey with the education niche? Is that the niche you'd like to talk about?
Sure, that's fine.
That's
Yeah.
when
And
you're
I think there's a lot that
affecting
people can
massive change. Sorry,
yeah.
what?
Yes, for sure. I think there's a lot people can relate to because whatever industry you're in, there's probably some foundation that's cracked. There's some brokenness, that we can bring our own individual perspective and our experiences to that can bring a point of healing. And so for me as an educator, I was looking out at the landscape of higher education and I saw some just incredible brokenness. One thing I would see is I would see students who are living in their cars amassing $120,000, $130,000 student loan that they would never, for a career that was never going to make enough to pay that loan back. And they're graduating, suffocating in debt. I saw students who were being taught in a way that was completely ineffective, a completely ineffective methodology. And here in California, the dropout rate is just astronomical. More students drop out of college than finish college, of course, in California. And a lot of that is because of this kind of ineffective methodology where students are treated like a passive observer, just sit and soak in, soak in. That's just not the way the current generation learns. Gen Xers, boomers, builders, we could learn by listening, but it's just not an
Yeah, but
effective
it's not our
methodology
favorite way.
at
I don't think
all.
it's a
Yeah,
human
for
way to learn.
sure. So really wanted something that would change that around. And then the sweeping secularization, even Christian colleges in the state of California, just the kinds of nonsense that's being taught, non-scientific nonsense across the board. I just really wanted to be the change in that. I taught a lot of Christian schools where, at the outset, you look at the mission vision and they'd say they're, faith-based school. And then you get to the school and realize they don't hire faith-based professors, who's doing the teaching, Luke 6:40 says that the student will become like the teacher when he's fully trained. And so a lot of parents are sending their kids off as kamikaze pilots into these secular bastions of indoctrination. And then they're wondering why their kids are all messed up. Well, they're all messed up because they're being fed lies and they're being constantly indoctrinated. Again, this is why what we're seeing across the nation right now, we've got 56 million kids just in K-12 in these sectors alone who are being influenced every day. And that's playing out. I mean, the stuff that's happening in our nation today, that couldn't have happened without that kind of foundation. So I really wanted to be a force for change, I saw that if you flatten the hierarchies in higher education, you can do so much more with so much less money. If you were really authentic in the way you hired people in a mentor model, you could disciple students through what I call educational discipleship, a whole different methodology that's rigorous, yes, for sure, but it's relational. And they love this method. It stays with them. It's not just memorize meaningless information that will never change your life and then forget it right after you take the test. It's
Right.
transformative learning. And then to be able to have that debt-free model, which is what we're a debt-free model, where students are not, caught in a stranglehold of consumer, it is kind of a consumer debt, and they're caught in this. And which the timing is perfect because Gen Zs are
Yep.
typically debt averse. They learned the lesson from watching their older brothers, sisters, parents get
Mhm.
into strangleholds of debt, and they just don't want to do it. And so it was really a perfect timing in terms of everything coming together and envisioning this. And now to see it in action, Ginger, it is just incredible. Anytime you theorize something, imagine something, envision something, and then you actually see it
Yeah.
in practice, it's just so much fun. My students are excelling. In fact, we had an event today. We're parent driven. We partner with parents. Most higher education institutions, boy, they want to cut off the parent as soon as they can. No more conversations yet. Harvard's Family Integrated Network of Educators study showed longitudinally the most important predictor of a student's socioacademic success is an involved parent, K to college. And
Very
yet we try to sever that
love that.
tie. So we really want to build that. We build the community model so students are part of the community. They're not just in a college bubble where their lives are college, 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 college. They
Yeah.
forsake all other relationships and they graduate and have no network.
We
We
were
want
just
to keep
talking
them
about
in
that
that
in an
network.
interview yesterday.
Yeah, much healthier model, much healthier model.
I think so too. I was talking to a student that I used to teach at San Diego State University yesterday for one of our pre-interviews. She's from Saudi Arabia. And we were talking about how you get to the end of education and there are no more railroad tracks.
Right.
You're just like, and now what do I do?
That's right.
So your model totally disrupts that and actually helps bring about a better way, right? And I want to get into more of that. What do you think is the biggest challenge that either you have had to face and overcome or these students that you are serving? What's the biggest obstacle that college students now are facing? Unless you want to answer it personally, but
Yeah, well, I can do both. I mean, I think for students, the lack of resilience is a commonality that we see across Gen Z.
you're hitting all the nails,
Sure.
all
For
of them.
sure, and we were just talking about that in class today. Today in class, I was going through all the stereotypes of Gen Zs, what other generations know about them based on their experience with them, and how my students are going to break free of all of these. So resilience is one of those markers where students have been coddled. They've been not allowed to fail, not allowed to make mistakes. Plus, then they're raised in this culture where duck syndrome, as Stanford puts it, reigns, where they feel like they have to just constantly look, they're that chill duck on the surface of the lake. Meanwhile, their feet are paddling like crazy
Yeah,
underneath the
right.
surface,
Yeah.
and they don't want anybody to know. And so we've got this whole dichotomy that's creating all kinds of anxiety. Most depressed, anxious, atheistic, suicide ideation prone generation in the history of our nation. I mean, come on, we definitely have to do something about that. And so, so when they learn the skills of resiliency, without resilience, as soon as they make a mistake, they fall down on the floor in a little fetal position and bawl and start crying, right? And they don't want to get back up. But with resilience, if a coworker corrects them, a lot of Gen Zs will just like die inside. Whereas resilience says, thank you for telling me that. I want to be better at this job. Thank you. Right? It's a sense of self, but because many of them don't have that sense of self, they've never been allowed to fail. So they don't have the strength of character. They've become snowflakes. Not my students, but other students, other Gen Zs. And that was definitely a lesson that I learned as well. I know you know a little bit about my background growing up, but I grew up in a home that was really a rough environment and didn't have nurture, love. And in fact, I just got a message from an old friend in high school who was saying, I was always so worried about you when we dropped you off at a dark home after volleyball practice, like there were no adults. And so having to learn to overcome fear, terrorizing, paralyzing fear to be able to walk in confidence, having to, in fact, we have this in common, the theater aspect. I know you had asked me
A lot
about,
of people don't know.
a lot of people don't know this, but when I was so shy when I was a child because I didn't have a sense of worth or value. And I remember being in kindergarten, I was too embarrassed to sneeze out loud. So I developed this little like, it's because I didn't want anybody to look at me. But when I
And
got
it's
to,
so cute. They're
I
like,
know,
what
right,
is that
right.
cuteness happening?
But when I got to junior high, I had this opportunity to get involved in theater. And Ginger, I just found like it freed me from this, what I know now is the spirit of shyness, the spirit of intimidation that was on me because I
Much
got to
fear.
be another character on stage. And so it really kind of started this journey of healing. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, that was God's plan for healing, was to give me these opportunities to be able to step outside of my own microcosm and begin to develop these skills. And so, and I would say the same is true for our students, being able to step outside of the generational lens, the generational pressures, the fear of failure, paralyzing fear of failure. I
Fear is
wrote about in my
right.
last book, Multi-Generational Marketplace, I wrote about some of the studies I'd done on Gen Zs, and they're one of their biggest terrors is they're afraid they're going to disappoint their boss. They're afraid they're going to make a mistake on the job. Everybody makes a mistake on the job, right? And so they're paralyzed by this fear. And so it keeps them from being innovative. And, as employers, we want innovative people. We want people who are willing to, that means taking a risk. They're not big risk takers. And so, that spirit of resilience, that, perseverance, I can do this. I know I had to learn that. And I know my students are definitely, learning that as well.
Yeah. The adaptability, innovation, willing to get back up, willing to, a belief that it is okay to fail.
Yeah.
That whole, I was talking about this book called Designing Your Life. It's in one of the other interviews, and Stanford professors are the ones that created that course, and then they wrote the book, and they put forward that concept. You have to fail forward. That's all that it is. You can fall on your face and fall on your face and fall on your face, but you just keep going forward. So it's not really failure. It's just, maybe it's just really choppy walking,
Choppy walking. I like
A
that.
friend of mine and I were talking, we were saying today, I'm like in the race and she's like, you're taking like leaps, you're running. I said, it's more like tripping, but like I'm still going forward. And I said, and sometimes I'm like on my back, like having tantrums or like, it's not working. I said, but I do the butt scuffle and I keep moving towards the finish line,
So funny. Keep moving on.
Resilience. What?
That's right. We keep moving on toward the finish line.
Keep moving on.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that this is, your answer to the last question is part of the answer to this next one, but what do you think are some of the best tools, resources, mindsets, habits, hacks for this generation? And remember, we have 15 countries watching. So it's not just American Gen Zers, but I think all of them deal with resilience issues, fear, clarity, confusion, those sort of things. What are your best resources, tools, mindsets, hacks that you would mention to them?
Yeah,
and you can include a book in there if you want, but anything you've got to say, I know you've got gems to throw us. So
for sure, that I think universally one of the things we see is that key element of resilience. But another thing we see is that our youngest students, our youngest generations often have not considered the impact of mentors on their lives. And there's an old saying that we become, the 5 people we spend the most time with. We're kind of the average sum of those people. And that can be a physical person, that could be a virtual person, that could be any voice that's speaking into our mind. So when we evaluate, we kind of step back and see who are the voices that are speaking into our minds, that our mindsets. That's really how we develop our paradigms. And so I think the first most important tip is to make make sure to be very certain that the voices that we're allowing, we are the gatekeepers of our hearts and our minds. And if we're allowing voices in that are going to be destructive, that are going to lead us astray, even naysayers, constant naysayers, you need a little bit of, I mean, you need some people who will challenge you for sure. But you don't want all people around you are yes men or, speak to itching ears, but you need people who will believe in you, encourage you, inspire you, and who will help you rise to that next level, because we put ceilings on ourselves constantly when we're around people who are not big thinkers, so get around people who will inspire you, encourage you, get a mentor, get somebody 10 years older than you that's gone before you, and ask that person questions. Find somebody 10 years younger than you and pour into that person, be that conduit both ways. C.S. Lewis always talked about the generational lens, and we get so stuck in a generational lens if we only hang out with our peers. I know in our country, that is definitely that segregated, age segregated everything. And we lose that rich network of mentorship, intergenerational mentorship. And I would say other countries, certainly some do it better than us, but the Western concept really does segregate ages like that. And so we need to restore that piece of our humanity. So we've got that rich thread, that rich tapestry of intergenerational connection. I think that's a key element. Number two, it's really important to remember that you don't have to be the sum total of everything you grew up in. You can't change your history, but you can change your destiny. And so I know for me, in fact, my husband and I just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary. Amazingly crazy, especially when you think about the kind of childhoods we grew up in. My parents married and divorced 7 different times. And we both grew up, we were both products of those, broken home environments, calling it what they really are. And, to be able to get around mentors, to get around people who would speak life into us, who would encourage us, who showed us a path. This is what you do. This is how you deal with conflict. This is how you deal with disagreements. This is how you deal with differences in your personality. People who would pour into us. That's another really important key element as well, is knowing that you don't have to continue to live out what your biological family of origin set in place for you.
Wow.
That's important to get free of that, I mean, I know some listeners, obviously you had a great family upbringing. I have a lot of friends like that. That's awesome. But if you didn't, don't feel like you have to be trapped in that. That doesn't have to hold you back. That doesn't have to be a ceiling over your life forever.
It's so good. I love it. I got to summarize some of your key points. So
one of the books I would say in that one too, Besser van der Kolk, who is just absolutely a legend. He's written some powerful stuff, but his book, The Body Keeps Score. Have you read that, Ginger?
No, but I feel like someone told me about that recently. I'm writing
Me.
that down.
It's probably me.
Van der Kolk,
It's so good. But it's kind of one of those right up there with Dr. Amen, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life kind of books, because it's so eye-opening. Besser van der Kolk, The Body Keeps Score. But I think it's one of those really eye-opening books to just help you break free. Just like if you've read Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, where it just looks at the practicality of what you may have inherited biologically, emotionally, sociologically, and how you can set some really clear patterns in place for your life, so that in 5 years, you're not going to be repeating those same ridiculous patterns of behavior, but you're going to be walking in freedom. And so same thing there. Love van der Kolk's work, really respect him as a researcher. He's done some tremendous work throughout the years. He was one of the first PTSD researchers, in fact. So he's just absolute legend material. He's got a lot of great stuff out there. But I love Dr. Amen. I love his work. He's obviously tremendously impacting lives, and just proactive. I love those proactive, if you're reading all materials that tell you this is how it is and you're never going to get better and your life's always going to be terrible, then that's the ceiling. That's the ceiling you chose over your life. Yeah. Is that where you want to live? Is that where you want to stay? So, so getting those influences around you, and then really starting to look honestly at those negative patterns or traits that you may have inherited, and how you can choose to break free of those.
That's exactly what this summit is about. Everybody doing these transformative things, regardless of situation, socioeconomic status, race, country, whatever. And I hope that people are blessed out of their socks by it. Would you mind spelling the Body Keeps score, that
Yep.
author's last name, because
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to spell it slowly for some.
Yeah. Well, Besser, Besser, and then his last name, Van, Van, one word.
Uh-huh.
Der, Der, one word, and then Kolk, Kolk. But if you look up the Body Keep score,
I will. I'm just gonna put it in the chat when I play
Oh, yeah.
this live. So, because I know people will ask me.
Yeah.
So last but not least, Dr. Lisa Dunne, tell us about either how we can get in touch with you, but I really want you to talk about how we can attend your university if we want to. It's a whole new model.
It is a whole new model, Ginger. It is a whole new world. We could sing it right here. It is amazing. It is so amazing. Well, CVCU, Chula Vista Christian University, if you search the phrase, you get a lot of our news articles. CVCU.us is our website. Of course, we're on Instagram and Facebook too. Follow us on social media. And if you're in the San Diego area, definitely connect.
Or if you want to be.
Or if you want to be, that's right.
Who
wouldn't want to be in San Diego, Ginger? Come on.
I do.
I know, of course.
I'm working on it. I'm down there about once a month, but I'm trying to get there more frequently.
That's awesome. So
and I know that some of these students would love to come there.
Yeah, so we're a total mentor model. So Socratic discussion. So instead of being poured into just sitting passively like an observer, students are actively engaged in the discussion. They do their homework, Ginger. They read their books. They write their papers. They come to class engaged and ready to dialogue. And so the learning that takes place, the critical thinking that develops is so much deeper than students who are just sitting there, again, passively as observers. We don't want to raise spectators, right? Yeah. We want to raise participants, world changers, industry disruptors. And this is how it's done. That's right.
I love it. I love it. It's so good. Are you guys hearing this? I'm so excited. I can't wait to see what happens in the chat when they watch this. So let me summarize. Resilience, overcoming fear. You don't let it cripple you and you don't stay on the ground. 60 days ago, I was in a puddle on the floor and I don't stay on the ground. I had to get up, wipe the snot off my face and just start taking little steps forward. So the resilience is so important. Overcoming fear. Don't let it cripple you. It's false. It's a shadow. It's not really a real thing. Most of the things we worry about don't ever happen anyway. You know? Yeah. Do you agree?
Oh, totally. And Ginger, if you go on my podcast, which is a communication architect, yes, I have one of my testimonies on there is about the kind of fear. I mean, you're talking about a little girl who would sit with my back against the wall all night holding a knife because I was afraid somebody was going to break into our house. So I talk about overcoming that, and the moment that was broken off of my life, that's on communication architect. That's iTunes and Spotify as well. So
okay,
another resource for you.
The thing is, where you grew up, it wasn't an irrational fear that could have actually happened.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
So the fears that I was facing, they were actually happening, but that you don't stay under it. That's what resilience is. That's right. You know, you get up over it.
You don't carry it throughout your life.
Right?
Yes.
Getting a mentor, it's so key. Nobody talks about that anymore. The mentors are so essential. And if you're in a position or a place or a country or a pandemic that's stopping you, get a book and make that person your mentor. Just be really careful about what you're letting come in, all of your gates, your eyes and your ears, your environment. And don't let your history define your future. That's how I would summarize a lot of what you were saying there at the end. And critical thinking. The necessity for this next generation to grow up being critical thinkers for themselves and having access to a whole new model of education. So if you want to go to sunny San Diego and have this brilliant woman as your president and teacher, along with an amazing cast and faculty, possibly me, but we will see what happens, right?
Yes.
Then that's the place to go. Of course, I'm going to put all of these addresses and names and authors and podcasts in the chat, but it's the Communication Architect. That's her podcast. CVCU.us is the college. If you want to look them up, you can also look for them on Instagram and Facebook. This is Dr. Lisa Dunne. And any parting tips or hints or fun things you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think just one more just quick point, Ginger, is that saying that, where our treasure is, our heart will be also. And, really being careful where we're investing our time and our energy. There's so many distractions today that can pull us away from what's important. But if we invest into first things first, the things that are most important in our value system, then there's going to be an overflow of that. And we're going to have peace and joy and hope that really separates us from the rest of the world who's got their priorities in the wrong order.
Good. I love that book, First Things First, Stephen Covey, right?
That's right.
I learned that. I used to teach that to my RAs. I was a hall director in
Oh,
grad school,
fun.
and I taught principles out of that book the whole year.
So good.
It's so important. He gives this image in the book. I don't know if you remember this, where he brings in this big jar
Yeah,
of sand,
done
and
it.
then he
Yeah,
tries to put
that's right.
some small pebbles into it. Then he tries to put some rocks, and they don't all fit. But then he empties it out, and he puts the big rocks in, these big rocks in first, and then he shakes all those pebbles in, and then he fills the sand, and then he even pours water in it, and then it's really full. And he said, now how did I fit all of those things in there? It was because I started with first things first. I started with those big things, the important things, the relationships, your faith, your purpose, your mission, love, your relationship with your husband, wife, mom, dad, family, community, like all the big things, they got to be in there first. And then all the other stuff will fit in around it. But if you start with all the other little distractions,
Never
which
fit
are a
it.
million,
That's right.
you'll never fit the big rocks in.
That's right.
Yeah, so good.
So
Oh, you're a treasure. What a treasure you are. We
you.
are so blessed to have you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
It was so great to be with you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Okay, I'll talk to you in a text later.
Sounds great, Ginger. Thank you again. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.